Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at some extremely fun battles from the Ultra League featuring a Shadow Zapdos not running Thunderbolt, but running Zap Cannon. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, MG, so many thanks for the battle submission. Shadow Zapdos already can output monster damage with its usual move of Thunderbolt, switching it out for the much harder hitting Zap Cannon, and we are in for a treat with these battles. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at Shadow Zap Cannon from Zapdos. Hopping into the first match, picking up an okay lead here, Giratina Origin versus Shadow Poliwrath. Shadow Poliwrath not going to be able to output a lot of fast move damage here, but the Icy Winds are going to hit for considerable damage. Giratina strikes first with the Shadow Ball, immediate shield from the opponent as they're going to return fire with the Icy Wind. The Icy Wind will be shielded as well. Giratina going to bank some energy, the save switch to the Shadow Ampharos. Out comes a Galarian Stunfisk. Oh boy, the question will be, will they respect the Focus Blast? Ampharos charging it up. The opponent does respect the Focus Blast. Heartbreak as Ampharos cannot pick up the KO. Opponent is going to go for the Rock Slide and the Farm Down. Ampharos would love to make the Focus Blast, but just runs out of HP. Can't quite get there. Forced to settle for the Brutal Swing. And Brutal Swing is not going to do a ton of damage. Now, forced to send back in the Giratina, and unfortunately, the Stunfisk just has a massive amount of energy. Earthquake will not KO. After the nerf, it's not the greatest move ever. Giratina is going to be able to make the Shadow Ball, but Shadow Ball is not going to be enough to KO either. Galarian Stunfisk in the Ultra League is very, very bulky. It's a CMP tie, and Giratina is just going to let this go. Earthquake picks up the knockout. In comes Shadow Zapdos. Opponent is going to send back in the Poliwrath. Poliwrath is going to be firing off the Icy Wind. Unfortunately, that debuff will now stay on the Zapdos for the rest of the game. Massive overfarm by the Zapdos, going to be able to pick up the knockout here with the Drill Peck. It all comes down to what is that final Pokemon in the back, and it's a Charizard, and Charizard is about to have a terrible day. Zap Cannon from the Shadow Zapdos, one-hit KO onto the Charizard. In comes the Stunfisk. Stunfisk gets outpaced, and Shadow Zapdos full 1v3 sweep in the endgame to secure the win. Hopping to the next match, leading Giratina Origin against Talonflame. This entire team can do well against Talonflame. Giratina is going to be able to outpace here. Shadow Ball will not KO, but it hits for substantial damage onto the Talon. Talonflame commits the shield. We see a switch and a catch. Ampharos catching the Brave Bird there. I was expecting the fly, but that actually was the Brave Bird. That did significant damage, and out comes Cresselia. Cresselia going to be able to survive multiple Brutal Swings, but the Brutal Swings do definitely add up. Ampharos with 2 shields and a choice to make, going to let this through, and unfortunately Ampharos just is not able to survive. You definitely want to send back in the Giratina here, as Giratina can survive a Moonblast, whereas the Shadow Zapdos, even though it's only taking neutral, just takes so much damage from any move that hits it. We actually do see a shield from the Giratina. Giratina massively overfarming, looking for the KO with this Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to be no-shielded by the Cresselia. Opponent can send back in the Talonflame, but they choose not to. They send out Registeel. And honestly, this is way better for MG, because Registeel is going to be walled by the Giratina unless they're running Flash Cannon, and Flash Cannon isn't really run too much anymore. So we are going to see the no shield as the opponent will go for the Zap Cannon and a switch to Shadow Zapdos. Shadow Zapdos farming up to a Zap Cannon of its own, and we're going to see Registeel firing off another Zap Cannon. The shield by the Zapdos. Zapdos does get debuffed, and I think that means that Registeel can survive now. Going for the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon connects, dealing massive damage. Unfortunately, not enough to KO due to the Zap Cannon debuff. We're going to see the Drill Peck fired off, not quite enough to knock out. Opponent is going to switch into the Talonflame. Talonflame not quite able to make the move before Zapdos makes the Drill Peck. Drill Peck can't quite pick up the KO, but the Thundershocks after can. Registeel is forced to throw its energy, and then Giratina will just be able to Shadow Claw down. So Registeel finally KOs the Zapdos, but they have nothing remaining for the Giratina, and they will resign the match. Tough lead in the next match, Giratina versus Alolan Ninetales. One Shadow Claw and the save switch to the Ampharos. Opponent responds with a Skeledirge, and that's a surprising counter switch from the opponent. Skeledirge struggles quite a bit against Shadow Ampharos, mainly due to the fact that Ampharos has the pacing advantage, but on top of that, being a 5-turn move user versus a 4-turn is just really uncomfortable. You never really have a good time to throw your charge attacks, whereas the 4-turn user always has an avenue to throw in good timing. The Skeledirge is barely able to hang on, exiting with a charge attack loaded, but on very low HP. In comes the Giratina. Giratina is going to commit the shield as the Skeledirge fires off the Shadow Ball. So Giratina does exit with a little bit of energy. Back in comes the Ninetales. Ninetales now to be hit with the Shadow Ball. I think at this point, you kind of just sacrifice the Giratina, hope they throw energy, and then try and sweep with the Zapdos. There's the move from the Ninetales, and we are going to see the no shield, saving it all for the Shadow Zapdos. Shadow Zapdos and a shield can go a long way. And there goes the shield. Zapdos is going to look to overfarm here a decent amount and see what the opponent wants to do. They send out Feraligatr. Oh boy, Zapdos overfarming to 100 energy, winning charge attack priority. That's a one-hit KO with the Zap Cannon. In comes the Ninetales. And what do you know? Shadow Zapdos sweeping another endgame. Drill Peck picks up the KO, and down goes the Charmer. Hopping into the next match, Giratina versus Pidgeot, a terrible lead. Two better responses in the back though, so we're going to see the switch into the Shadow Ampharos. Opponent responds with Shadow, Alolan, Sandslash. Sandslash, of course, can threaten a Drill Run. We do see the shield from the Ampharos. Ampharos, no baits here, going straight for the Focus Blast. Do they respect it? They do not! They try and call the Brutal Swing bait. They get KO'd, and in comes Tentacruel. Tentacruel now going to be hit with the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing doesn't do a lot of damage here, but at this point, the biggest issue for the opponent is, of course, going to be the fast move pressure from Volt Switch. They throw the Scald to pick up the knockout. Pidgeot up energy could still be a problem, though. In comes the Giratina, the quick switch to Pidgeot, and Pidgeot is going to be answered with the Zapdos. Ideally, Zapdos really wants to get a shield call right, either no shielding a Feather Dance or shielding a Brave Bird. It's going to be a tough call to make. There's a lot of energy on the Pidgeot. Zapdos lets it go. It's the Brave Bird. Brave Bird does not quite KO, but I believe it is going to set up a potential Pidgeot farm down here. The Drill Peck does get shielded. Pidgeot does get the farm down, and now Giratina in a bit of a difficult position. Giratina is going to let it through, calling the Feather Dance, and it is the Feather Dance. That is a big call. Opponent firing off more energy from the Pidgeot. Giratina letting it through again. Another Feather Dance. Unfortunately, the Giratina's attack is now 4 stages debuffed. This means the Shadow Ball will not do a lot of damage. The Shadow Ball connects. Oh, that does nothing. Giratina is going to have to try for an incredibly aggressive farm down. Giratina commits the shield. The Scald can't debuff because Giratina's attack cannot possibly get any lower. Giratina firing off the Dragon Pulse, and this is a situation where Dragon Pulse can come in clutch. It is quad debuffed though, trying to make it to another Dragon Pulse and getting there despite 4 on the attack drop. Still, Giratina able to put the team on his back and secure the victory. Great lead in the next match. Giratina versus the Shadow Typhlosion. Opponent switches out instantly as they send in Feraligatr. This is actually a very uncomfortable matchup for Shadow Ampharos, as if a Hydro Cannon lands, the Shadow Feraligatr can actually flip this. Ampharos is going to throw 1 Volt Switch and fire off the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing shielded by Feraligatr. Feraligatr already at another Hydro Cannon. That energy generation is just incredibly fast. We're going to see the shield from the Ampharos. Ampharos is going to get the full farm down, exiting with quite a lot of energy. In comes Typhlosion. Oh no. Shadow Ampharos going for the Focus Blast, and it connects. That's a full one-hit KO. In the back, it is going to be... Oh, this is actually a bit tricky. It is going to be the Annihilape, and Annihilape, not the most comfortable Pokemon to see here. In comes the Giratina. Can Giratina survive a Shadow Ball here? This is the Ultra League, but Annihilape has a lot of attack. Oh, it survives. Thank goodness. It barely hangs on. Not a lot of HP remaining, but Shadow Ball is going to secure the win and KO Annihilape. Hopping into the next match, Giratina versus Gliscor. If Gliscor is running Night Slash, this could get quite uncomfortable, but Gliscor definitely an awkward Pokemon for this team to see. Giratina is going to no shield, and it is the Night Slash from the Gliscor. Thankfully, Gliscor does not get the boost. Giratina firing off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will deal some pretty nice damage. Opponent commits the shield, and they're going for yet another Night Slash. Giratina knows that it can withstand this damage. Not well, however, trying to make it to another Shadow Ball and getting there. Again, this will not KO the Gliscor, but it will get the Gliscor low. Gliscor is going to no shield, and Gliscor exits with quite a lot of energy. In comes the Zapdos. Zapdos looking to go for an incredibly aggressive Thundershock farm down, tanking the first Night Slash in case of a boost. No boost does occur, and now I think at this point, yeah, you kind of have to shield the second. Trying for the farm down, Gliscor. Oh, Gliscor makes the move. Zapdos forced to fire off the Drill Peck. Drill Peck will be able to pick up the KO, but that is a lot of energy lost. It's Cresselia, and let's see this Zap Cannon. There's no way they're shielding Cresselia. Zap Cannon is able to land, doing about 2/3 of Cresselia's health. Great patience there. Oh no! Tried to be patient with the Brutal Swing, but it does get clicked as the opponent switches into the Poliwrath. Oh, that is unfortunate. Ampharos continuing the farm. Poliwrath firing off energy. Scald will KO here. The Scald. Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't. The Ampharos surviving on 1 HP. Undercharging the Focus Blast. That does still KO. And now it's Cresselia versus the Zapdos. And unfortunately, I think the Cresselia just has too much energy here. Cresselia goes for the Grass Knot, and they can just farm down. They fire off another charge attack, but realistically, they did not need to do that as they can just Psycho Cut down, and unfortunately, the opponent will be able to secure the win. And as we see here, this battler actually hitting Veteran with this team, so big congratulations to them. Decent lead in the next match, Giratina Origin versus Tapu Fini. Of course, there are two better responses to the Tapu in the back, but Giratina into Tapu isn't too bad, mainly due to the fact that you outpace, so you're able to output some pretty nice damage with Shadow Ball, and Nature's Madness, while it's super effective, will not KO. In comes the Ampharos. Opponent is going to switch out. They send in a Skeledirge. Very nice charge attack timing there, making sure that the opponent does not sneak through the Incinerate. The Brutal Swing's able to land, and there's Brutal Swing number 2 as well. This Brutal Swing is going to be forcing the shield from the opponent. Ampharos able to get 3 free turns there, and Ampharos just choosing to let this through. Oh, they went disarming, and it doesn't KO, and the Ampharos gets the farm down. That's the big difference right there. The 4 turns versus 5. Both Pokemon on low HP, but of course, the 5-turn move is not going to register if the 4-turn move picks up the KO. In comes the Zapdos. Zapdos kind of has to shield everything here. Zapdos shields up. It is just going to be the Surf from the Tapu Fini. Tapu can make another move as well. Zapdos double shielding. The question will be, can Zapdos make a Zap Cannon versus whatever's in the back? Oh no, Trainer, it's the Talonflame. Zap Cannon, that's going to be good night to that Talonflame. In comes the Tapu Fini. Opponent does not want to play anymore, and they will concede the match. We've got a bit of a surprise on the lead in the next match, leading Giratina into Swampert. Swampert, a Pokemon that was top meta in previous seasons, but has fallen off a bit, especially after the Earthquake nerf and the rise of other more prominent water types like Feraligatr. Swampert has farmed up a massive amount of energy. We see the shield from the Giratina, and Giratina does get the shield call right. It is the Earthquake. Giratina making it to Shadow Ball number 2. This Shadow Ball is going to be no shielded by the Swampert. Swampert is barely able to hang on. Swampert firing off another Earthquake. Giratina is going to get the farm down and win lead. Opponent sends in Gliscor. Gliscor was already a little bit problematic in a previous battle. Giratina fires off the Shadow Ball, the shield from the opponent, and the aggressive pivot to Shadow Zapdos. Shadow Zapdos can survive any one move here. We're going to see the opponent is going to fire off the Aerial Ace, and Aerial Ace for being resisted still definitely does add up. Another charge attack fired off by the Gliscor. We're going to see the shield from the Zapdos. Zapdos at the back-to-back Drill Pecks. I think 2 Drill Pecks will be enough to knock out here. It is a Shadow Zapdos after all. It definitely will be. So Zapdos does get to remove Gliscor from the field of play. It all comes down to what's in the back. It's a Tentacruel. Can Zapdos make it to the Zap Cannon? It looks like the answer is no. The Zap Cannon a bit too expensive in this moment. Just going to settle for the Drill Peck, but that does quite a bit of damage. In comes the Shadow Ampharos, and there's just electric types everywhere, and the opponent will resign the match. We've got one more match, and what a lead. Giratina versus Typhlosion, the safe switch to Poliwrath, but Poliwrath up energy is actually very awkward here, because Poliwrath, I mean, its energy goes everywhere against this team. Icy Wind, so the opponent opting for the debuff instead of the damage, but if they shield the Focus Blast, they can just fully farm all the way down, and the energy they have is going to be very difficult to deal with. That's exactly what they do. They shield once, they farm down. This is really awkward. I mean, you could set in Zapdos because it has better pacing, but Zapdos is really not going to appreciate having its damage output reduced. So Zapdos is going to commit the shield on the Icy Wind. Zapdos farming up energy here, and there's another Icy Wind right on cue. Zapdos could potentially look to bank a bunch of energy and then switch into the Giratina, and there it is. I honestly like that play. It's a Snorlax in the back. I haven't seen a Snorlax in ages, but here it is, and it usually is a wall to Giratina, but this is not your average Giratina. This Giratina is running Dragon Pulse, and Dragon Pulse allows it to actually fight back against the normals. And this is an Earthquake Snorlax as well. The Earthquake almost KOing, but the Giratina barely able to hang on and make it to one final move. Intentionally letting the Snorlax farm down just to get energy on the Zapdos, and Zapdos' energy is going to be so threatening here. The opponent sends out Typhlosion, already at 100 energy. Unfortunately, the Incinerate does go through. The Drill Peck does get no shielded, and oh no, the Thunder Punch is now reached. The opponent can just click Thunder Punch and win the game here. Oh, they switch out! They try and catch the loose con for the opponent. They had the move, but they thought Zapdos was doubled up, so they switch out. They had a guaranteed win con, but they weren't sure of Zapdos' energy, and it ends up costing them the game. All in all, these were some extremely fun battles, so thank you to MG for submitting them. Shadow Zapdos, already a pretty difficult Pokemon to run. Like, it's very high risk, high reward. Like, if you can get that energy advantage, then it can take over games. But man, if it gets in one of those type disadvantage situations, it is painful because it just gets absolutely crushed, which is very, very rough. Overall, I do think that with very careful play, teams like these are teams that you can climb with. Like we obviously saw, this trainer was able to hit veteran with the team, which is great. If you are looking for elo gains, I do think running a more meta team is probably the safer way to do it, but this definitely does look like a very, very fun team. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.